currently being spoken with by the juvenile office and the school resource officer. So no one seemed to be in any danger. Some students immediately reported it, and that child is in custody.
Where is that?
Battle High School.
So what kind of information or what kind of conversation were you all having with parents throughout the day? Were parents updated as far as like what was going on each step, or was it kind of like we'll tell you guys when we regroup at the end of the day?
So everyone has to understand that our immediate concern is safety.
Right.
And so sometimes that's hard because that makes people seem like we're withholding information, we don't want to say anything. But our immediate number one concern is getting cops deployed where we need to send them and make sure everyone's safe. That often for investigative reasons may not include letting everybody know, hey, here's where we're all going, here's what we're all doing. And we also kind of have to gauge what the threat is and where it's stemming from. So the last thing we want to do, and one of the reasons we use the language that we did in the press release, is because it's very important that we not fan the flames of something. We want to be very measured. We work very closely with Columbia Public Schools because this is obviously very heavy on parents' minds, on administrators' minds, teachers, police officers. It's something that we take very seriously, but we want to make sure we're being very reasonable in how we approach it. So when we don't instantaneously say, here's what we found out, here's what we know, it's a lot of times because we don't know yet. This is coming in very fast and very furious through multiple social media channels. We literally have parents saying, well, I didn't see it, but my kid said they saw something 2 nights ago. And so there's a lot of what we would maybe term as hearsay, in a courtroom, that we are trying to parse through and determine what's real and what's just kids passing information to other kids. And sometimes that is very difficult, as you can imagine. So I think the really important thing that we're very pleased with in this situation is we're very glad that it does not appear there was any credible threat, to the extent that we know at this time, is that people are starting to really grasp this see something, say something mentality. So we always try to look for the silver lining, and in this case I think that is the silver lining. Someone saw something, and while it wasn't anything that came from anyone in Columbia, you don't ever know that. And so there are kids and there are parents stepping up and saying, hey, my child saw this, I feel like I need to report it, and we're getting that information and being able to start that investigative process. So that's kind of how this morning and this afternoon has gone.
How did detectives trace it from social media to the original source and determine it wasn't credible?
So they work backwards through the kids, and so in this case, if you notice, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but in the threat that was kind of passed around nationwide, there was a specific name associated with that Facebook account, and so they worked backwards to that name once again. And you'll notice there's even some of the same misspellings of words. It mirrors it that closely. So they just start working backwards, which is a little bit difficult sometimes when you're dealing with certain social media platforms, but we do the best we can.
So was it a student in Columbia that then shared that information, or was it a student outside of Columbia that then shared that information?
And I'm saying there could have been far more shares than what we're aware of. The one that made us aware, a student from outside Columbia shared it with a friend here in Columbia, kind of as a, hey, I saw this on social media, you're my friend, I'm going to warn you. It was not in any way, shape, or form that person threatening anyone.
Is that still online right now? Has it been taken down?
I don't know if it's still online or not. I think it was actually, I don't know if it's still online right now. I think it was actually shared via Snapchat, so I think it was just a screenshot.
What was it specifically that was said? Do you know?
It was something to the effect of, it was the same language that was used in the Facebook message from the original social media post yesterday where the kid was arrested in Ohio. So it had something to do, I can't quote it verbatim, but it had something to do with, I'm going to bring a gun, I'm going to do, and they spelled shoot incorrectly. It was that type of, but it didn't name, it did not name any specific school in it at that time. But then this person who was sharing it basically said, hey, I saw this, if you go to Hickman, Rockbridge, Battle, don't go to school tomorrow. So that's where it kind of got linked here locally, just because that kid was trying to warn friends.
How long did it take detectives to nail down where that came from? Oh,
they were en route to the original location. Once we determined where that child was, they were en route there by, I would say, 10:30, 11 o'clock this morning to do a direct interview with that child.
And then how long after was that after it was initially reported? approximately?
I'd say by the time they worked backward through all the different kids, I would say, maybe 2 hours. Very rough guesstimates there.
And the child that shared that is under getting no repercussions.
Absolutely not. We have no evidence that there was any intention other than just to warn friends.
How many officers responded to how many schools, and what were they looking for?
I have no idea how many officers responded. We called officers in that were not working today, or that were not scheduled till later in the day, and also detectives who would obviously normally be in here working on other cases were deployed out to the schools. And so we just try to triage everything. We create a point of contact in the patrol bureau. We create a point of contact within investigations, and we have those two commanders work together to disseminate information and deploy resources to talk. You're going to go here and be stationed. I need you to go here and talk to these people, and then everyone reports back and shares information so that we can keep trying to work backwards through this web of social media postings.
Why did it take so long for the department to say something if they knew about it last night?
The incident that came up last night was at the time, seemed very, what's the word I want to use? It seemed very confined to just a couple kids. It was literally, none of the kids from today were involved in last night. It was literally a share between two friends. And so once we had looked at it and said, okay, this is from the incident in Ohio, Oregon, all these other places. It was a non-issue at that point. And so we communicate with the school, obviously, but once this morning rolled around, so keep in mind, that all got, from the best I can tell, that all got kind of rolled up and finalized around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, it seems like. So by that time, you got everybody's, a few hours go by, and then kids are waking up, and then there's this whole new resurgence of the information again. So
why do you think it was specifically they're looking at Columbia as, if it was a kid in Ohio, why are they even thinking?
So if you Google that whole incident, it was literally passed around Oregon, California, multiple states. So I think it's just, honestly, this is a perfect example of the power of social media. You've got things that are happening far outside this jurisdiction, this state, that are being shared around and being reshared, and then, I'm by no means criticizing anybody for sharing the information. We want people to let us know, but this also speaks to, and you cannot expect a 14 or a 15-year-old to be able to really critically look at that information and go, oh, well, that came from here. I'm going to go and Google this and find out that it came from this other place. They're just scared. So in this case, they did the right thing. They told some adults, they told the police, and it all got worked out. But these things have taken on a complete life of their own. We're obviously just a few days post the shooting in Florida. Everyone's very heightened, which is completely understandable. We're heightened here at the police department. And so I don't think this is the first time we're going to see this happen. But I think, like I said, I'm trying very hard, and we're trying hard to look at the upside, which is we would much rather go through this exercise, have people communicate with us, share the information, and us find out it wasn't anything that was going on here. In this case, it wasn't even a threat to anyone here, than not have the information and wonder and find out later.
So at what point did you determine that it could be a threat, and also what schools were listed in the connection? So the way it was phrased, it never was presented as this person is threatening. Like when you read it, it was clear to me that this child was sharing it with other kids. The question was, what seems to happen is, you guys know it's like the telephone game, right? It gets shared, and then verbally kids are telling other kids and parents are telling other parents that so-and-so saw this, that, and the other on Snapchat, which disappeared. So unless somebody screenshotted it, nobody actually knows what it originally said. So it's a really, really rough telephone game. So the actual schools got introduced into the whole string of events when the child who was warning the other children just put in their post, hey, if you go to these schools, be very careful because I saw this on social media. The original social media post said nothing about Columbia, said nothing about Columbia Public Schools. That was just where Columbia Public Schools got rolled into this. But as I said, we have to take precautions, and that's our job.
Would the response have been different if not for what happened at Parkland?
No, I don't think so. This is not the first time we've had to deal with something of this nature. And to be honest with you, we've had more. Some of you might remember, we had threats a few years ago that were being made, written on things in bathrooms at some of the high schools and whatnot. So those were far more of a directly linked threat than this. So we take step backs from this, and when things are resolved, we try to look at it as, okay, this is a train, because this becomes then a training exercise for us. Once we figure out, hey, it looks like everything is good, there's nothing here, let's go back and look, okay, how could we do this better? How could we communicate with this person better, or this group better, or what might we do differently? We do an after action, meeting on everything like this. So those are just some of the things that we take into account, because we want to be ready. We don't want, God forbid, something happen here, that everybody here needs to know what they're going to do. So we try to look at it as an opportunity for improvement anytime we go through one of these. Just like, honestly, we would when we get phone calls about an active shooter. We've had people call before and think there's someone in the parking garage, that's armed. And so we have to act as if, until we know that it's not credible, that it is credible. And so we approach that situation tactically as if it was. And then afterwards take a step back and go, okay, if we had that to do over again, what would we do differently and why?
Do you worry about the attention that this brings to the subject, that it will make people more likely to maybe do something like this?
I think, unfortunately, and when I say we, I mean, you've got parents, you've got students, you've got schools, you've got law enforcement all caught in this awful position of, and we've had them here before in the past, kids call in bomb threats or something because they don't want to take a test that day. And that has really happened. So it used to be, before the age of frequent mass shootings like we have today, those things were a lot easier to go, okay, what is this really? Now we're to a point where we have to take every one of these threats very seriously. So it expends tons of resources. I will say, in the past, when we have had threats that actually originated here in this jurisdiction, and it was in fact a threat, as I talked about in the update with the battle student, that student's been arrested. We take terroristic threats very, very seriously. The school does. Kids can face expulsion and other sanctions. So it's not a prank anymore. It used to be more treated as a prank, and we're talking obviously 15, 20 years ago, but now we have to take it very seriously.
Everyone else is good here. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully you have a not as busy end of the day.